This is a calm space for rest and quiet listening. You don't need to focus on these words. You don't need to follow any thought. You can simply let this narration remain in the background. Nothing is required of you right now. Many people notice that letting go feels harder at night. Thoughts linger longer. Memories stay active. Unfinished moments return quietly. The mind seems reluctant to release them. This resistance is not unusual. It reflects how the brain protects and organizes experience. During the day, attention remains outward. Tasks, conversations, and decisions occupy awareness. There is little space to examine internal thoughts. At night, external demands fade. Silence replaces activity. The brain shifts toward internal processing. This shift reveals thoughts that remained incomplete. Incomplete thoughts naturally hold attention. The brain prefers closure. When closure is missing, experience remains active. Night time provides the stillness required for this process. Stillness allows unfinished impressions to surface. This can feel like resistance. In reality, it reflects continuation. The brain is not refusing to rest. It is attempting to organize unresolved information. Unresolved information often carries emotional weight. Emotion increases memory strength. Stronger memories return more easily. At night, emotional filtering softens. Thoughts appear without distraction. The mind becomes more aware of unfinished moments. This awareness can feel persistent. Persistence reflects the brain's search for resolution. Resolution does not always require action. Sometimes it requires quiet observation. When experiences are observed without interruption, they begin to settle. The brain gradually reduces emotional intensity. This reduction allows thoughts to loosen. Loosened thoughts require less attention. Less attention supports rest. The brain does not resist letting go intentionally. It resists because unfinished experiences remain active. Activity naturally draws awareness. As awareness softens, activity reduces. Reduction happens gradually, not suddenly. The mind releases experiences in stages. Each stage reduces mental tension. This staged release often begins during quiet nighttime periods. Silence allows emotional processing to continue without pressure. Pressure increases alertness. Alertness prevents rest. Quiet observation reduces pressure. Reduced pressure allows thoughts to soften. Softened thoughts lose urgency. Loss of urgency allows attention to drift. Drifting attention supports deeper rest. The brain slowly transitions from processing to release. Release does not feel forced. It happens quietly, without effort, without awareness, and this quiet transition often begins at night. As the brain continues processing unfinished experience, attention begins to slow. Thoughts no longer appear with urgency. They surface gently, then drift away. This drifting reflects a shift in mental priority. During the day, thoughts support action. At night, thoughts support release. The brain is no longer preparing for response. It is reducing activation. When unfinished impressions surface in this state, they feel different. They are quieter, less structured, less demanding. Emotion attached to thought often softens first. Intensity fades before content does. This allows experience to be revisited without strain. The nervous system responds to this shift. Alertness gradually decreases. Internal signals become quieter. The body mirrors this process. Breathing deepens naturally. Muscles release without awareness. These changes occur without instruction. They do not require attention. Thought continues to move in the background, but it holds less focus. Memories pass without engagement. Images lose clarity as they move through awareness. This loss of clarity signals completion. The brain is no longer holding experience for resolution. It is allowing impressions to settle. As settling continues, resistance weakens. Thoughts return less frequently. When they return, they carry less detail. Their emotional edges soften. Their sequence dissolves. Association replaces order. This transition reduces cognitive effort. Effortlessness supports rest. The brain conserves energy by releasing detail. Attention becomes wider and less focused. Listening remains present but passive. Awareness allows experience to pass without recording it. This state often feels unfamiliar, not because something is wrong, but because effort is no longer required. The brain does not resist this change. Resistance requires energy. Energy is already receding. Unfinished thoughts continue to quiet. Pauses between impressions grow longer. Spaces appear without content. These spaces are not empty. They are restorative. The mind does not rush to fill them. It allows them to remain. Over time, resistance to letting go fades naturally. Attention no longer returns to unfinished moments. It rests without direction. This shift signals deeper release. The brain is no longer organizing experience. It is preparing to disengage, and disengagement unfolds quietly, without effort, without awareness, without resistance. As resistance continues to soften, awareness becomes less defined. The mind no longer tracks each thought clearly. Impressions appear briefly, then dissolve without sequence. This change reflects reduced mental effort. Effort is no longer necessary. The brain has shifted away from control. Control requires monitoring. Monitoring has faded. Thought no longer arrives as complete ideas. Fragments replace narratives. Images replace explanations. The mind moves away from language. Language belongs to wakeful focus. Here, focus relaxes. Unfinished experiences lose their pull. They no longer demand attention. Demand requires urgency. Urgency has softened. The nervous system continues settling quietly. Signals remain low and steady. There is no readiness for action. The body follows this quiet state. Breathing remains even and natural. Muscles stay relaxed without awareness. These responses unfold on their own. They do not need direction. As thought fragments fade, pauses grow longer. Moments without content become more frequent. These moments feel calm. They are not empty. They feel complete. The mind does not attempt to fill them. It allows them to remain. Allowing requires no effort. Effort has largely dissolved. Attention becomes diffuse. It no longer focuses or drifts. It simply remains lightly present. Presence does not require clarity now. Clarity belongs to analysis. Analysis has ended. Occasional impressions may still arise. They dissolve before recognition forms. There is no impulse to engage. Engagement would require intention. Intention has softened. Time becomes less noticeable. Moments do not connect clearly. Sequence weakens. Awareness rests without direction. It does not move toward thought. It does not resist quiet. It remains neutral. This neutrality supports deeper release. The brain no longer differentiates experience. Difference requires comparison. Comparison has faded. The remaining awareness feels thin and quiet. It does not observe itself. Observation has softened beyond use. Resistance has fully loosened. Nothing remains to be held. The mind prepares to rest without effort, quietly, gradually, without boundary, without notice. As resistance fades further, awareness becomes lighter. The mind no longer stays with any single impression. Thought appears briefly, then dissolves without completion. Completion is no longer required. The brain has reduced its need for resolution. Resolution belongs to waking focus. Here, focus softens. Unfinished experiences lose emotional intensity. Emotion releases before content disappears. This release reduces mental weight. Weight requires attention to hold it. Attention is already thinning. The nervous system continues settling quietly. Signals remain low and stable. There is no preparation for action. The body mirrors this quiet state. Breathing remains steady and even. Muscles rest without awareness. These changes unfold naturally. They do not require instruction. As thought becomes less structured, language fades. Words lose clarity. Sound becomes tone rather than meaning. Tone blends into silence. Listening continues passively. Nothing stands out. Nothing calls attention back. Memory fragments may still appear. They lack detail. They fade quickly. There is no impulse to follow them. Following requires intention. Intention has softened. Time becomes less distinct. Moments do not connect clearly. Sequence weakens further. Awareness rests without direction. It does not move toward thought. It does not resist quiet. It remains neutral. Neutral awareness supports deeper rest. The brain no longer organizes experience. Organization requires effort. Effort is no longer present. The remaining awareness feels thin and calm. It does not observe itself. Observation has softened beyond function. Resistance has fully dissolved. Nothing remains unfinished. Nothing remains unresolved. The mind releases the final need to hold experience. Release happens gradually, not suddenly. Quiet continues to expand, without effort, without boundary, without notice. As resistance disappears, awareness becomes increasingly soft. The mind no longer settles on thought content. Impressions appear lightly, then fade without shape. There is no need to complete them. Completion requires effort. Effort has already dissolved. Unfinished experiences no longer carry urgency. Urgency depends on alertness. Alertness has faded. Emotion attached to memory continues softening. Intensity releases gradually. As intensity fades, thought loses momentum. Momentum requires attention. Attention is already thinning. The nervous system remains calm and balanced. Signals stay low and steady. There is no readiness for movement. The body reflects this quiet condition. Breathing continues evenly and softly. Muscles remain relaxed without awareness. Language fades further into the background. Words lose definition. Sound becomes texture. Texture blends into silence. Listening remains passive. Nothing stands out. Nothing draws awareness back. Thought fragments may still arise occasionally. They dissolve before forming structure. There is no impulse to engage. Engagement would require intention. Intention has softened completely. Time becomes less noticeable. Moments do not connect. Sequence dissolves. Awareness remains without direction. It does not move toward unfinished experience. It does not resist stillness. It rests neutrally. Neutral awareness supports deeper release. The brain no longer separates experience. Separation requires comparison. Comparison has faded. The remaining awareness feels thin and quiet. It does not observe itself. Observation has softened beyond function. Resistance has fully disappeared. Nothing remains to be held. Nothing remains unresolved. The mind releases all remaining effort. Release continues quietly, gradually, without boundary, without notice. As quiet becomes more stable, awareness continues to lighten. The mind no longer returns to unfinished experience. Thought appears only faintly. It dissolves before forming detail. There is no pull toward memory. There is no need to revisit. Unfinished impressions have completed their movement. The brain is no longer organizing experience. It is releasing remaining tension. Release does not feel active. It unfolds silently. Without recognition, thought activity slows further. Long spaces appear between impressions. These spaces feel smooth and uninterrupted. They do not invite attention. The mind does not attempt to fill them. It allows them to remain. Allowing requires no effort. Effort has already softened. Awareness no longer centers itself. It does not focus on sound. It does not focus on thought. It remains lightly present. Presence is passive now. The nervous system remains settled. Signals are minimal and steady. The body mirrors this calm state. Breathing continues evenly. Muscles remain relaxed without awareness. Language loses importance. Words blend into background sound. Meaning fades into tone. Tone blends into silence. Listening continues without engagement. Nothing stands out. Nothing draws attention back. Occasional impressions may still appear. They dissolve almost immediately. There is no need to follow them. Following would require intention. Intention has dissolved. Time becomes less distinct. Moments do not connect clearly. Sequence weakens. Awareness remains without direction. It does not seek unfinished thought. It does not resist silence. It rests neutrally between both. This neutrality supports deeper disengagement. The brain no longer differentiates experience. Difference requires comparison. Comparison has ended. The remaining awareness feels thin and calm. It does not observe itself. Observation has softened beyond use. Resistance is fully released. The mind prepares for deeper rest, quietly, gradually, without boundary, without notice. As quiet continues to stabilize, awareness becomes increasingly subtle. The mind no longer checks for unfinished experience. Thought rarely appears now. When it does, it lacks clarity. It fades before becoming recognizable. There is no impulse to follow it. Following requires intention. Intention has already dissolved. Unfinished impressions have lost their pull. They no longer request attention. Requesting requires urgency. Urgency has faded. The nervous system remains deeply settled. Signals stay low and balanced. There is no preparation for action. The body reflects this calm condition. Breathing continues softly and evenly. Muscles remain loose without awareness. Language continues fading from awareness. Words lose distinction. Sound becomes tone. Tone blends into silence. Listening remains passive. Nothing stands out. Nothing invites attention back. Occasional impressions may arise faintly. They dissolve before forming structure. There is no attempt to engage. Engagement would require effort. Effort is no longer available. Time becomes difficult to sense. Moments do not connect. Sequence dissolves further. Awareness rests without direction. It does not move toward memory. It does not resist stillness. It remains neutral. Neutral awareness supports deeper release. The brain no longer organizes experience. Organization requires energy. Energy is receding. The remaining awareness feels thin and quiet. It does not observe itself. Observation has softened beyond use. Resistance has fully disappeared. Nothing remains to be held. Nothing remains unresolved. The mind releases the final need for control. Release unfolds gradually. Quiet expands naturally, without effort, without boundary, without notice. As stillness becomes more familiar, awareness continues to soften. The mind no longer returns to unfinished experience. Thought rarely forms now. When it does, it appears incomplete. It dissolves before becoming clear. There is no impulse to notice it. Noticing would require effort. Effort has already faded. Unfinished impressions no longer hold attention. Attention depends on urgency. Urgency has dissolved. The nervous system remains calm and steady. Signals stay minimal. There is no readiness for movement. The body mirrors this quiet state. Breathing continues evenly and softly. Muscles remain relaxed without awareness. Language fades further into background awareness. Words lose their edges. Sound becomes texture. Texture blends into silence. Listening continues without engagement. Nothing stands out. Nothing draws attention back. Occasional impressions may still appear faintly. They dissolve almost immediately. There is no need to follow them. Following requires intention. Intention has dissolved. Time becomes less distinct. Moments do not connect clearly. Sequence weakens. Awareness remains without direction. It does not move toward unfinished thought. It does not resist silence. It rests neutrally between both. Neutral awareness supports deeper disengagement. The brain no longer differentiates experience. Difference requires comparison. Comparison has ended. The remaining awareness feels thin and calm. It does not observe itself. Observation has softened beyond use. Resistance has fully released. The mind prepares for deeper rest. Quiet continues to expand. gradually, without boundary, without notice. Awareness now feels very light. It no longer returns to unfinished experience. It does not linger on memory. It moves gently without direction. Thought rarely appears. When it does, it lacks shape. It dissolves before becoming clear. There is no impulse to follow it. Following requires intention. Intention has already softened. Unfinished impressions have lost their emotional pull. Emotion releases before memory disappears. Without emotion, thought loses momentum. Momentum requires attention. Attention is thinning further. The nervous system remains deeply settled. Signals stay low and steady. There is no readiness for action. The body reflects this calm condition. Breathing continues softly and evenly. Muscles remain loose without awareness. Language has faded into background presence. Words no longer carry meaning. Sound becomes tone. Tone blends into silence. Listening continues passively. Nothing stands out. Nothing draws attention back. Occasional impressions may arise faintly. They dissolve before recognition forms. There is no need to engage them. Engagement would require effort. Effort is no longer present. Time becomes difficult to sense. Moments do not connect. Sequence dissolves further. Awareness rests without direction. It does not move toward unfinished thought. It does not resist quiet. It remains neutral. Neutral awareness supports deeper release. The brain no longer organizes experience. Organization requires energy. Energy continues receding. The remaining awareness feels thin and quiet. It does not observe itself. Observation has softened beyond use. Resistance has fully disappeared. Nothing remains to be held. Nothing remains unresolved. The mind releases the final sense of control. Release unfolds quietly, gradually, without boundary, without notice. Awareness now feels almost transparent. It does not return to unfinished experience. It does not linger on memory or thought. It passes through experience lightly. The mind no longer organizes impressions. Nothing is gathered. Nothing is held. Thought rarely forms. When it does, it lacks clarity. It dissolves before becoming recognizable. There is no impulse to notice it. Noticing would require intention. Intention has already dissolved. Unfinished experiences have fully lost urgency. Urgency depends on emotional intensity. Emotional intensity has faded. Without emotion, memory loses momentum. Momentum requires attention. Attention continues thinning. The nervous system remains deeply calm. Signals stay minimal and steady. There is no readiness for action. The body reflects this quiet state. Breathing continues softly and evenly. Muscles remain relaxed without awareness. Language has faded into background presence. Words no longer carry meaning. Sound becomes tone. Tone blends fully into silence. Listening continues without engagement. Nothing stands out. Nothing calls attention back. Occasional impressions may arise faintly. They dissolve before recognition forms. There is no need to follow them. Following requires effort. Effort is no longer available. Time becomes almost unnoticeable. Moments do not connect. Sequence dissolves completely. Awareness rests without direction. It does not move toward unfinished thought. It does not resist stillness. It remains neutral. Neutral awareness supports deeper release. The brain no longer differentiates experience. Difference requires comparison. Comparison has faded. The remaining awareness feels thin and calm. It does not observe itself. Observation has softened beyond function. Resistance has fully disappeared. Nothing remains to be held. Nothing remains unresolved. The mind releases the final sense of effort. Release unfolds silently, gradually, without boundary, without notice. Awareness now remains without clear edges. It does not gather around unfinished experience. It does not separate itself from quiet. It remains diffuse and unobtrusive. The mind no longer signals engagement. There is no sense of attending. Attention has softened beyond function. Thought rarely appears in any form. If impressions arise, they are incomplete. They dissolve before becoming defined. There is no impulse to notice them. Noticing would require effort. Effort has already dissolved. Unfinished experiences no longer carry emotional weight. Emotion has released its hold. Without emotional intensity, memory loses strength. Without strength, thought loses momentum. Momentum requires attention. Attention continues fading. The nervous system remains calm and balanced. Signals remain low and steady. There is no preparation for action. The body rests quietly. Breathing continues evenly and softly. Muscles remain relaxed without awareness. Language no longer organizes awareness. Words lose distinction. Sound blends completely into silence. Listening continues passively. Nothing stands out. Nothing draws attention back. Memory no longer surfaces clearly. The past has fully released its influence. There is no movement toward recollection. There is no resistance to stillness. Awareness rests without location. It does not move forward or backward. Time has lost structure. Moments do not connect. Sequence no longer forms. There is no sense of duration. Awareness does not register passing. Registration requires effort. Effort is no longer present. The remaining presence feels thin and calm. It does not observe itself. Observation has softened beyond use. Resistance has fully dissolved. Nothing remains unfinished. Nothing remains unresolved. The mind settles completely into rest. Rest unfolds quietly, gradually, without boundary, without notice. Awareness now feels barely present. It does not return to check for experience. It does not hover near thought. It remains faint and unobtrusive. The mind no longer engages with unfinished impressions. There is nothing left to organize, nothing left to resolve. Thought does not form clearly. If impressions arise, they are incomplete. They dissolve before recognition occurs. There is no impulse to follow them. Following would require intention. Intention has faded completely. Long stretches pass without mental movement. These stretches feel smooth and continuous. They do not suggest time passing. Time has lost its structure. The nervous system remains deeply settled. Signals stay minimal and steady. There is no alertness remaining. The body rests without sensation. Breathing continues quietly on its own. There is no awareness of it. Muscles remain loose and still. There is no impulse to adjust. Language has fully softened. Words no longer separate from silence. Sound carries no distinction. Nothing stands apart from quiet. Listening has thinned beyond function. Memory does not return. The past has fully released its presence. There is no movement toward recollection. There is no resistance to stillness. Awareness does not locate itself. Location no longer applies. Meaning itself has dissolved. Moments do not connect. Sequence has disappeared. There is no sense of duration. Awareness does not measure passing. Measurement would require effort. Effort is no longer available. The remaining presence is extremely light. It does not observe itself. Observation has fully faded. Nothing remains to be processed. Nothing remains unfinished. The mind has released its final need to hold experience. Rest continues quietly, gradually, without boundary, without notice. Awareness no longer gathers itself. It does not return to observe rest. It remains faint and without edge. The mind is no longer engaged in experience. There is no monitoring of thought, no tracking of memory, no effort to remain present. Thought does not appear in any clear form. If impressions arise, they are indistinct. They dissolve before recognition. There is no impulse to follow them. Following would require energy. Energy has receded. Long intervals pass without mental activity. These intervals feel smooth and uninterrupted. They do not feel long or short. Time has lost relevance. The nervous system remains deeply calm. Signals are steady and minimal. There is no readiness for action. The body rests completely. Breathing continues without awareness. Muscles remain relaxed and still. Language no longer separates sound from silence. There are no distinctions to register. Listening has soft beyond function. Nothing stands out. Nothing calls attention back. Memory has fully released its presence. The past does not return. There is no movement toward recollection. There is no resistance to quiet. Awareness does not locate itself anywhere. Location has no meaning here. Meaning itself has faded. Moments do not connect. Sequence has disappeared. There is no sense of duration. Awareness does not register passing. Registration would require effort. Effort is no longer present. The remaining presence feels almost transparent. It does not observe itself. Observation has fully dissolved. Nothing remains unfinished. Nothing remains unresolved. The mind has fully released its activity. Rest continues on its own, without effort, without boundary, without notice. There is no awareness returning now. It does not check for quiet. It does not notice rest. It has released that function completely. The mind is no longer engaged with experience. There is no attention forming, no thought emerging, no impression passing through. Mental movement has ended. Nothing gathers. Nothing dissolves. Nothing remains to be held. Time has no structure here. There is no moment following another. No before. No after. The nervous system remains fully settled. There are no signals to respond to. No readiness to act. The body rests without sensation. Breathing continues quietly on its own. There is no awareness of it. Muscles remain loose and still. Language does not exist in this state. There are no words to distinguish. No sound separate from silence. Listening has dissolved. Memory has no presence. The past does not return. There is no movement toward unfinished thought. There is no resistance to stillness. Awareness does not locate itself. Location has no meaning. Meaning itself has faded completely. There is no sequence, no duration, no passing of time. Nothing remains unresolved. Nothing remains unfinished. The mind has fully let go. What remains is uninterrupted rest. Rest without awareness of rest. Rest without boundary. Rest without beginning or end. Quiet remains, unnoticed, unchanging, complete. Awareness does not gather any more. It does not return to unfinished thought. It remains light and unformed. The mind no longer searches for resolution. There is nothing left to resolve, nothing left to complete. Thought does not organize itself. It appears faintly, then disappears before becoming clear. There is no impulse to follow it. Following would require intention. Intention has dissolved. Long stretches pass without movement. These stretches feel smooth, uninterrupted. They do not suggest time. Time has loosened its structure. The nervous system remains deeply settled. Signals stay minimal. There is no alertness forming. The body continues resting quietly. Breathing moves without awareness. Muscles remain relaxed and still. There is no adjustment, no correction. Language no longer forms clearly. Words lose their edges. Sound carries no meaning. Meaning itself has soft. Listening fades further into quiet. Nothing stands apart. Nothing draws attention back. Memory does not surface. The past has no presence here. There is no movement toward thought. No resistance to silence. Awareness does not locate itself. Location has no relevance. There is no center, no boundary. Moments do not connect. There is no sequence, no progression. Only stillness. Stillness without effort. Stillness without awareness of stillness. The mind has stopped holding experience. Nothing remains unfinished. Nothing remains unresolved. Rest continues on its own, without effort, without direction, without notice. Quiet expands gently, unmeasured, unbroken, unchanged. There is no gathering of thought now. Nothing forms clearly. Nothing completes. Awareness does not return to check. It remains faint, unstructured, unfocused. The mind is no longer organizing experience. There is no search for resolution, no impulse to revisit memory. Memory does not surface. If impressions appear, they dissolve immediately. There is no need to notice them. Noticing would require effort. Effort has faded. Time feels absent. There is no sense of passing, no movement from one moment to another. The nervous system remains deeply quiet. Signals are minimal. There is no readiness. The body continues resting. Breathing moves gently on its own. There is no awareness of it. Muscles remain loose and still. Language has nearly disappeared. Words do not separate from silence. Sound carries no meaning. Listening no longer functions. Nothing stands out. Nothing calls attention back. There is no center of awareness, no edge, no direction. Awareness does not observe itself. Observation has dissolved. Nothing remains to hold. Nothing remains to release. The mind has fully softened. Rest continues without interruption, without effort, without boundary, without notice. Quiet remains, unchanging, complete. There is almost nothing forming now. No clear thought, no returning memory. Awareness does not gather. It remains faint, undefined, unstructured. Nothing asks for attention. Nothing requests completion. The mind is no longer holding experience. There is no effort, no monitoring, no direction. Time has fully loosened. There is no sequence, no before, no after. The nervous system remains deeply still. Signals are quiet, balanced, minimal. The body rests without sensation. Breathing continues softly, unnoticed. Muscles remain loose, still. Language has thinned almost completely. Words do not carry meaning. Sound does not stand apart from silence. Listening has dissolved. There is no center, no edge, no position. Awareness does not observe itself. There is nothing to observe, nothing to resolve, nothing unfinished. Rest continues naturally, without effort, without boundary, without awareness of itself. Quiet remains, unmeasured, unbroken, complete. Nothing gathers now, no thought forming, no memory returning. Awareness remains faint, unfocused, unstructured. There is no movement, no direction, no effort. Time does not move forward. There is no sequence, no passing. The nervous system stays quiet, balanced, still. The body rests fully. Breathing continues softly, unnoticed. Muscles remain loose, motionless. Language has nearly vanished. Words do not separate from silence. Sound has no distinction. Listening no longer occurs. There is no center, no edge, no boundary, nothing unfinished, nothing unresolved, nothing waiting. Rest continues on its own, without effort, without awareness, without return. Quiet remains, steady, unbroken, complete. There is nothing forming now, no return of thought, no movement of memory. Awareness remains barely present, soft, undefined. There is no direction, no effort, no monitoring. Time has no shape, no before, no after. The nervous system stays quiet, still, balanced. The body continues resting. Breathing moves gently, unnoticed. Muscles remain loose, still. Language has dissolved completely. No words separate from silence. No sound stands apart. Listening has ended. There is no center, no boundary, no location. Nothing remains unfinished. Nothing remains unresolved. Rest holds naturally, without effort, without awareness, without return. Quiet remains, unbroken, unchanged, complete. There is no returning now, no forming of thought, no movement of memory. Awareness remains faint, barely there. No direction, no effort, no observation. Time does not move, no sequence, no passing. The nervous system is quiet, still, balanced. The body rests completely. Breathing continues, unnoticed. Muscles remain loose, motionless. Language no longer exists. No words, no sound, no listening, nothing unfinished, nothing waiting, nothing to resolve. Rest continues, without effort, without awareness, without return. Quiet remains, unbroken, unchanging, complete.